Next speaker will be Garth Hall, and he's going to talk to us about the state of the valley's water. He's our Deputy Operating Officer, Water Supply Division with the Santa Clara Valley Water District. Garth Hall joined the Santa Clara Valley Water District in April of 2014. He is currently the Deputy Operating Officer. He has responsibilities for recycle water initiatives, programs in groundwater management, securing imported water, operating local surface reservoirs, implementing water conservation, and registering and metering groundwater wells. Garth's prior experience includes 9 years with East Bay Municipal Utility District and Water Resources Planning and managing that district's contractual relationship with the Bureau of Reclamation for Central Valley Project Supply. His experience also includes 20 years with Pacific Gas and Electric Company, where he managed in series various departments and large programs. Garth earned his PhD in Civil Engineering, Water Resources Planning in South Africa, and also earned 3 graduate degrees from Stanford University. He's a registered civil engineer in California. Please help me welcome Garth Hall.
Thank you, Brian, and good morning, everyone. I just have to say before we go, Chair Santos had his opening remarks. I really appreciate them, and Director Shui is still here. Without a commitment that staff would enjoy, and all of the folks in the county would enjoy, from our board of directors for a continual focus on water conservation, our program wouldn't be even a patch of what it really is today. It's a great program. I'm so proud of Jerry and his entire team and his interface with you through the Landscape Committee and other activities. But again, with the sponsorship that's necessary from the board, we have it. And so that is of great benefit to the county. And from the staff's point of view, it makes life pretty straightforward. We get the sponsorship, we have the mandate, and we do everything we can with the resources we have to improve water conservation in the county. Having said all that, I'd like to take a look at, since I'm advertised to talk about the water supply situation, take a look at, this is all of California over the last 12, 15 years. And as you look at that, there's the temperature, which to me was kind of a very alarming thing in the last drought years, how that has kicked up. But if you step aside from the temperature, you also see in the blue chart, you'll see that the precipitation levels go up and down every year. We all know that California is a state that has a wide range and coastal droughts. Now, if you take the years 2007, which is not all the way over to the left, but I just took 10 years. 2007 through 2016, that's all the way to the end on the right, that's 10 years. And if you look at the number of years, there's only 3 that had above average precipitation. The other 7 are below. And I think that, that's sort of like the trend that we have in California. And it isn't always 310 or something, but we do have long series of droughts. And we vividly remember how recently we suffered and struggled with the drought that we just came through. 2017 broke that big time. But having a series of long dry periods is kind of the norm for California. We have some wonderful years of bountiful rain, but we do, and this I know is very well known to this community more than anybody else, because you're dealing with gardens and landscapes that really have to deal with this wide variety of water supply. So for current year, I look over to the right, and these are cumulative graphs, and I apologize for being very graphical and numeric here, but if you look at the top little line on the, let's see if I can get this little mouse to work, that might help. This little line, this green line over here, that was last year. A very, very bountiful year. As you can see, we went up to a cumulative amount of 95 inches of northern Sierra precipitation. That's not snow depth, that's water depth once you compress it down to water. Right now, where we are is where the little circle is down and to the left, still in the beginning part of this year, and relate that to the light blue average condition, and we're kind of tracking below average, not desperately below average, but we're below average, and things can change in a heartbeat. We could have a very wet late February, March, we don't know yet, but it's beginning to look like we're on an average or below average year trend without any promises about what happens next. So that's the way I'm thinking right now. We're in that kind of a trend. When you look at the hydrology, in terms of snow water depth, for example, in the Northern Sierra, which is important for us because, as you will remember, 40% of our water supply to this county comes through the Delta and is derived mostly from snowpack and runoff in the Sierras, and particularly the Northern Sierras. So that's important in terms of precipitation. So if you look at the average condition in the little yellowish bars, and then you look at on a year-to-date basis, and you see where we are today, the green, it's relatively lower. Far right is rainfall in Santa Clara County, and we're quite a bit lower. That's consistent with that chart that I just said on the previous slide. However, reservoir storage, surface reservoir storage is very important because we have that carryover capability. Look at Shasta, it's well above average even though we're going into dry year. It still has this big carryover from last year. Oroville would be that, except that a certain well-known problem occurred, and the state had to lower the reservoir for dam safety reasons while they conduct repairs and prepare for completion of those repairs. San Luis is a local reservoir, which is a balancing tank. Our reservoirs are fairly low. As those who drive around, you'll notice that Lexington and others that you drive by are looking pretty low right now. Now, typically, we start off the winter pretty low because we want to capture the runoff, but they're continuing low, and that's what you'd expect when you're running at an average or below average condition. And so one of the things I want to shift to is how well are we doing as a county in terms of water use reductions. Now, I'm not using conservation, because conservation to me is a broader program strategy, but water use reductions. And so the yardstick that the board adopted was to look back at the last relatively good year, which is 2013, and say, okay, that's our yardstick, that's our baseline for looking at the capturing of water use reductions thereafter. And look at 2017. Even though we're coming out of a drought, we scored a 21% reduction even then relative to 2013. This is a calendar year, January through December. A pretty good result. Now, recall that our board currently does have a call for all of the retailers, which are mostly the cities and the water distribution companies like San Jose Water Company, Cal Water, to continue to conserve water. And that they've asked those to continue to conserve even today, going into this year, at the 20% level. So right now, we're at about what the board has called for. When you look at the outlook for this year, the most important thing we look for this time of the year is what are the allocations of water, since, again, I mentioned that 40% of our water, it comes through the Delta, and there's two big projects that drive that, are the State Water Project. Mostly Oroville is the big reservoir for that, and then the Central Valley Project, Shasta being the biggest on that. So we look at the allocations at this time of the year, and so far we've got a 20% allocation from the state. Now, it's not unusual for them to start off low. They work the curve on that, the probability curve, and they creep up as the year goes on and increase that allocation. But it's 20% is we think we'll get more than that, but not a full amount by any shot as we had last year. Central Valley Project, they delayed. They have fish-related issues that have to be resolved before they finally announce what they will get there. You may know that the district has a contractual arrangement and has a large amount of water, actually 250,000, 250,000 acre feet, stored down in the Bakersfield area in a project or a system known as the Semi-Tropic Storage Basin. And we have an arrangement whereby when we have good years, we park water down there. And then in a dry condition, we'll actually exchange that water with say, a metropolitan water district, which taking southbound water, we divert some, we work out an exchange deal where we take some of their water and use it, and they pull our water from the bank. But it's effectively a very real-time exchange that really works and allows us to help. We're looking for anything we can do that's relatively inexpensive to balance out our dry and wet conditions, and the semi-tropic, which is the third bullet there, is a solution for that. Despite the fact that I mentioned we seem to be in an average, below average condition right now, what we as staff use as guidance is this little note, this colorful little rainbow chart on the right as an indicator of where we're going. The groundwater basin in Santa Clara Valley is one of our probably less known but most valuable assets in terms of water in the entire county. So it has a usable amount of storage of well over 200,000 acre-feet, but when you get to use that amount, you get in towards the lower part of it, we get into certain problems which we avoid. But right now, it's important to notice that we're forecasting that even given the current precip conditions that we've taken account of, we expect to be well in the normal range by the end of the calendar year in terms of groundwater. Now, groundwater is pumped by most of the retailers, not all, and piped to residents and commercial users. Many folks who open their faucets at home don't realize that a good chunk of that water, and perhaps all of it in some of the cities, is groundwater. And so it's this big balancing tank that serves in that regard. We also serve treated water, but the groundwater basin is our big balancing tank, and we use it as the big focal point for how well we're doing. When we get low in that area, that is the indicator that drives staff to recommend to the board, start looking to call for water use reductions, because we're worried about how we are able to sustain ourselves if the following year turns out to be dry as well. So then, as mentioned, the board, it was June 13th in 2017 when the board last revisited the call for water and decided that it is appropriate to keep on at the 20% reduction call. Now, we do not mandate reductions since we're a wholesale agency, but we have worked closely and continue to work closely with all of the retailers, mostly the cities, to try to collaborate in terms of what reductions can be achieved. And so the result of that was in the earlier slide I said to you. We've achieved a great deal. And let me say we, when I say we, I mean everyone. It's not this district that has uniquely achieved that. It is every city, every retailer has gone above and beyond during the recent drought years to cut back on water supply. Collectively, we have achieved a great deal. So then we just are attentive, and I think many of you may know that the state continually revises its policies and its orders related to droughts, and some of those have real mandates and real force of law behind them. And so the governor and the office through the State Water Resource Control Board is developing and refining policies all the time to make water conservation a California way of life, which is very sensible given the theme that we all know so well, that we have a lot of droughts around here and they will revisit us. So, in fact, just yesterday, the State Board came up with a new draft with some tweaks to some of the requirements that all cities and water users in the state would have to follow, and we have a couple of weeks in which to review and comment on those. Most of those tend to be very helpful, very sensible things that are good reminders to everyone in the state on how to pay attention to efficient water usage. So the ones that are, here are some examples of, and I'm not going to go through them all, but you can quickly fly through them with your eyes and see that these are things that are fairly familiar to you. You've seen the calls for these in your own cities, et cetera. They're fairly local and sensible things to do. Some of them may seem to be more symbolic, but symbolism is very important in getting people to pay attention to water. So, one of the most important things, Brian mentioned that this is the third summit we've had, and you can already see the continuity of work that's been done through these workshops and the landscape committee which meets monthly, as Brian indicated. Working with our staff, it has been influential and helpful to our staff and to our board to incorporate information from the landscape committee and from these workshops. For example, we now have the Valley of Water campaign. Some of the seeds with that were, well, let's rather than focus on the desperation of the drought, how we'll manage it, let's kind of take a deep breath and say we always want to value our water. So our Valley of Water campaign, the theme was discussed at last workshop. And you've seen the effects of that. We've had a very substantial campaign on that for this past year or two. Things that we already have done that were talked about is a demonstration garden map tool. It's on the website. Have established, and will refresh from time to time, a district demo garden. Walk around here with taking your kids on strollers or dogs for a walk, or just your binoculars, as I do. I'm a birder, and you'll notice that there's many of the plantings around here have signs on them. South Bay Green Gardens is a collaborative effort with many other agencies. We join in access to their website and contribute to it. The Greywater program, even though it's small and doesn't account for a lot of water, it does call a great deal of interest, and there's been a great fascination with Greywater. We have rebates, and we really do try to make everyone aware of what it is to install a Greywater program and how relatively straightforward it is once you decide you'd like to do it. So there are presentations, flyers, and videos on the website. And we have a very active presentation program, and I think 12. This last year we did 12 various presentations throughout the county. We're continuing on that program. And that's one of the areas where everyone who has a passion for not only their own landscape area, but also saving a little water, can really get involved. So to look at the landscape rebate, I won't go through. Most of you are very familiar with as a drought tool. We had these a great deal of attention and a great response to the rebates for landscape conversions. So some ideas came out of the last workshop. What about some improvements to that to make it more efficient? And so we've taken note of that, and now we have an online application rather than having to fill out a form and fax it in or PDF it in. You can do it online. We have a list of the top 100 plants. So I think some thoughts were, rather than wait for that in the mail or so on, you can just go online and you can find the top 100 plants that we think have worked. And there's some success that we can build upon it through this drought, as we've seen individuals who've followed the plant list and the nurseries that provide them. The top 100 plants are the ones that we think are the most successful for this particular area. So coming are the Landscape Maintenance Consultation Program, and that's before I go off the landscape rebate, do you know that in the last fiscal year, which is, that's July of 2016 through June of 27, in this county, we provided rebates for conversions of 1.8 million square feet. It's not just the rebates, but it is just the commitment of the community to convert. You drive around residential neighborhoods right now, and you can see the difference. I mean, it is huge. And I'll tell you in a little bit my own personal experience, but that is a huge success. Coming forward, since we've got all this data now for the drought, we're taking a look at what do we learn from that? How much can you quantify those conversions into water usage? And so there's a report coming out very soon that does that. One of the things that I'll give you a sneak preview, because Jerry told me about this just yesterday, and I was blown away. We did not expect that individuals, residences, and commercial landscapes that convert from the green turf to a more xeriscapic landscape would actually have a buildup over time of the water conserved, or the water use reduction. We thought that it would, in the first year, because there's a lot of plant watering as you plant, you have to sustain these new plants, get them established. It's usually in the wintertime, but the general thing is that people will cut back on water, and it would plateau out and maybe just dissipate. People would, we didn't know. We just didn't. But what's happened is that year after year, if you look at average statistics, you're getting more and more water use reduction in the same installation. So people will, in year one, will put in, yes, I'll take a bit of water. Year two, they get some savings. Year three, on average, they're getting even more savings. Now, I'll give you my example. My partner and I converted and took the rebate to convert a residential in Mountain View. So yeah, in the first winter we watered a lot. You get these plants and it's fun. They're new kind of plants. Right now they're well established. We don't water at all, even through the summers. I mean, last year was, we had bountiful rains to sustain, but we don't even put a hose out, not a bucket out at all. The landscape is looking great. It's very well sustained, and we don't use a drop of water on it. I wouldn't have believed that was possible. And I think that's what a lot of people are finding, is that you can do it. You don't, even in this climate, you don't need it. You don't need the water. You need it to start your projects, but in most cases, I'm not saying that that's the ultimate gold standard, but in our case, we have found that that's true. No watering at all. We got a little tomato patch here. I mean, that's an exception, but in all the xeriscapic area, no water at all. Anyway, so that's coming out in the report. I again want to just thank you all, and if any questions, I may call Jerry up to help me with them, but I really thank you for being here, and thank you for your passion, your commitment, and I wish you a very productive day.